Honey, I'm filming. All right, welcome back, everybody, to America's Mom. So great to have you here today. I'm your host, Sharona Bishop, and boy, do we have some great news for you guys. For the last 24 hours, the Democrats just keep exposing why their party is going to be in the grave soon. It's relentlessly disgusting, disturbing, and completely twisted. Now that the adults are back in the room, now that we can call a spade, everybody is recognizing and realizing the Democrats have been pushing the most radically progressive, disgusting agenda we've ever seen. Now, here's the reality of it. You were not able to say what you wanted, think what you let's just face it, there were thought crimes happening in America. If you were not embracing trans ideology, then you were a xenophobe. If you were not embracing every other form of compatibility except for heterosexuals, then you were obviously you were anti and you were homophobe of everything out there underneath the sun. I mean, it's so elementary what they were doing, and yet it was actually captivating not only America but the entire world. They're back. They're going to continue down this road. They're going to continue down this rhetoric, even though it's proven it's a losing message, even though more than 70% of Americans are completely opposed to trans ideology over children. They're going to double down, triple down, and they're not going to stop because this is part of their cult. This is literally a religion. And these are definitely the most committed parishioners I've ever seen in my life. People talked about radical Islam. Well, let me just tell you about the radical cult of LBGTQIA MAP. I don't even know what their formal name is. We could call them Baphomets. We could call them Satanists. We could call them a myriad of other things that you've all seen online. But at the end of the day, they are cult members, and this is part of their religion. They've replaced God with this idea that they can be God. And guys, if you don't believe me, you have to see what's happening in Colorado. We're going to take a look at that in just 1 minute. But before we get there, the head of the DNC, Howard Dean, I completely forgot about that lunatic. Did you guys forget about his? Remember the whooping and hollering guy? Sometimes he seems so nice. I feel bad that he's actually in the Democrat Party. I feel like maybe something happened and he's not really a Democrat at all until he says things like this.
Well, the ironic thing is Trump never gave a damn about getting all those people to vote for him. He inflamed the hell out of them and got them all mad. And they had reason to be mad, and we didn't do our job as Democrats, I don't think, in connecting with working class people, as Bernie has talked about. But the fact of the matter is Trump doesn't give a damn about him. All he cares about is tax cuts for his billionaire friends and himself. And now we're seeing exactly the result of that. He's throwing the working class people under the bus, throwing veterans on the bus under the bus, which is insane. There's almost 2/3 of them voted for him, and he doesn't care. All he wants is his tax cuts, his legacy as a gazillionaire, and respect from all the Silicon Valley bros. This country is being turned upside down, and Donald Trump is the revolutionary who's going to incite revolution if he doesn't stop this crap.
Governor Dr. Dean, always appreciate you, including how straightforward you are. I can understand when you speak. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely. New court losses.
Massive disconnect there. Let's just break it down for Howard for just a moment. More than 2/3 of veterans voted for President Trump because he is a commander in chief, and Biden spent all of his time in the basement. And Susan Rice and the Obama leftovers were actually running this country. That's not what they voted for. When we voted for President Trump, we also were saying that we no longer were going to go along with this radical leftist agenda. So Howard has a few problems there. He does not remember why people have left the Democrat Party, and they're not coming back, Howard. It doesn't matter if you have conversations with them. They actually have decided now that boys do not belong in girls' sports or in women's private spaces, and they're going to stick to that now. You played out the experiment. You're unwilling to humble yourself and say maybe that was the wrong thing to do, and the American people are not going to forget that. The Democrat Party, you guys, trust me on this, the Democrat Party will cease to exist. It will have to be rebranded entirely. Actually, we're just going to throw it out, and you're going to have to come up with something new. Maybe Kennedy will launch that after he's done with HHS. I do not know, but the radicalism that invaded and took over the Democrat Party, this is not my grandfather's party. He was a Democrat. He was a JFK Democrat. He told me all about the greatness of the Democrat Party and how they were for the working man. But the last 4 years have been spent propping up this church, this cult that was bent on making every little boy a girl and every little girl a boy, and providing a new production of children for the most disgusting part of our society. It has been a grooming pedophilia program for the last 4 years, and we all know it. If you're looking at what's happening in Colorado and you think that that's isolation, it's not. That is the agenda that's being created for the rest of the country is happening right in Colorado. So let me just remind you guys why the Democrat Party is hemorrhaging people. Nobody wants to be affiliated with this crazy, insane organization. Can we talk about Howard for just a moment? Look at the guy. The guy looks like he has spent the entire last 4 months apologizing and having to make an apologetic tour. He's been groveling. He's not been able to sleep. He's clearly not doing well, to explain why the Democrats are so bad and why they won't let go of the leftist ideology. They're not going to do it, guys. Trust me, they're not going to let it go. They're going to double and triple down. I'm going to share this video with you. This was literally from a legislative session just this past week here in the state of Colorado. All of the reasons why parents should never be informed about anything, not just trans ideology, not just your son thinks he might be a girl and we want to put him on some meds here at school. Not just that, although that seems obvious enough to me, but anything pertaining to your child, because it might hurt the mental wellness of your child for a parent to know what's going on with their own kid. This is a real session. This really happened this week in Colorado. And by the way, this is representative of the entire Democrat Party in Colorado under one Jared Polis, the governor that is, yes, running the Governors Association of America. Listen to this, get some duct tape.
I'm here today to oppose House Bill 1251 because it creates unnecessary and dangerous barriers to mental health care for LGBTQ plus youth, putting their well-being and lives at risk.
I'm Reverend Candace Woods. My pronouns are she, her, and I am an ordained clergy person. I'm also a comprehensive sexuality educator, and I work regularly with youth and their trusted adults. Sometimes those identities may conflict with the ideas and beliefs and values of their families, but the rights of the child to their own personhood must trump a parent's desire to control.
The assumption that minors cannot understand their medical needs or that they should be prevented from making decisions about their bodies and health is both incorrect and unjust.
So Inside Out Your Services is really important because it offers a safe space for a lot of youth who do not have those spaces at home or in their schools. So among LGBT youth, I believe it is 37% do not have do not have affirming homes, and 55% do not have affirming schools. So we offer an important third space for that. And in our space, we also provide them with sexual health education, STD testing, and we also provide them with mental health services. But we find that providing those services without the parental consent decreases the risk of suicide.
For youth who are LGBTQ+, we know that the youth of this community have a 120% higher risk of experiencing homelessness. This is predominantly caused by family conflict and specifically a lack of acceptance among family members. This bill would increase homelessness and suicidality amongst LGBTQ+ youth.
I'm here as an organizing specialist for Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, and we are here to strongly oppose this bill. By stripping young people of their bodily autonomy, this bill would add additional barriers for already marginalized youth when it comes to accessing care. If my children ever felt unsafe sharing their health concerns with me, that is an issue with my parenting, not an issue with the law.
With sex abusers and trafficking
I mean, honestly, it's the same nonsense over and over and over again. Your child belongs to them. They want to sexualize your child. They want to mentally control your child. And of course, they want to make sure that your child is tested for all sorts of STDs that they will be getting from living the lifestyle that each one of those people is advocating for. Now, if you were as confused as I was over who was a him, her, they, them, she, he, I mean, I don't know what to tell you because that is Colorado. And those are the people running the government there and creating the legislation that they are passing around to blue states around the country. They are very quickly and actively trying to get out from under President Trump's executive order that says no more of this nonsense, no more of putting boys in girls' spaces, no more funding trans ideology. President Trump has said that they will stop all federal funding to all school districts who are advancing this exact ideology that you just heard right there. And all of that happens in the schools, guys. The bill was going to allow for parents to just know if their child needed mental health services. That's it. Because right now in Colorado, that's against the law. You cannot inform a parent if their child is needing any type of mental health services. You cannot inform a child if your child is struggling with gender ideology or if your child has decided to change their name at school. Just to remind you, they passed what was called the non-legal name change bill, meaning that all teachers must refer to a child by the name they choose for that day or face criminal charges. That's the great state of Colorado under the worst governor in the history of America, Jared Polis. There's going to be more about him later. But let's move into big national news. We have a special guest with us today. I think it's really critical. Obviously, what happens across the water affects us in America in the sense that those are our neighbors. You know, we have family that go back and forth. We have expats who are living over in those countries. And in the last year or so, I've become a lot more familiar with the politics over in the UK and what the EU does and what is NATO actually and how do they really govern. Because that is what they're doing. They're governing all of those nations. They've basically minimized the actual governance of the countries. Prime ministers really are not that significant or important because the EU is dictating everything over there. And so, of course, we had the big Brexit debacle, except it wasn't a debacle, it was a massive victory. Some thought it was a debacle because they wanted to stick with the EU and be told what to do and how to live and have all their money taken from them. But fortunately, the UK left the EU and did their own thing. But there was one man that was leading the charge on that. I think I mentioned this to you guys actually. Once the UK left the EU, you guys immediately their GDP rose by 20% because they stopped being stolen from. The EU stopped stealing from them and giving them a false sense of security and dictating everything for them. And you know, really, that's the epitome of communism, isn't it? Where you're not free to have your own self-determination, your own governance. But here to talk a whole lot more about that is the great David C. Bannerman. He was on the front lines heading up Brexit over there. You're so distinguished, so well spoken. You're a former MP there in the UK. I'm so grateful that you're here with us today to explain a very, very serious situation that's now happening. And if people are not really observing what's going on over there in the UK and with the EU countries as well, it seems like they're preparing for war, David. But what do you see happening on the heels of Zelensky's smackdown in the Trump office?
Well, thanks, Ronan. It's very good to see you again. It was great to see you in Brussels and in Romania before then, a year ago. Yeah, it's there's a lot happening clearly in the world, and I think Europe is overreacting to what President Trump is doing. I don't think there's any understanding that he's trying to drive a deal. And as part of that, you know, he has to reach out to both parties, including Putin, who's probably the most resistant to any kind of deal. And that is not widely understood. And there's a deeper agenda going on, I think, which is Europe, but the EU would love to say that NATO is no more, NATO is dead. Because what they want is a European army, European armed forces. This is meant to be a trade bloc, the EU, but actually it's a superstate arising, European superstate, which is closer, I think, unfortunately, to the Soviet Union than actually to the United States of America. It's that kind of superstate. It's very dangerous in the world. And I think what they're proposing to help Ukraine is worrying. But pushing NATO forces right up against Russian forces, having the Americans providing a security oversight is worrying, I think, because you're rubbing up against directly against Russians. Though I do support Ukraine, and I think there's been some regrettable comments about Zelensky or what the bravery that Ukraine has shown. But I think it's all about misunderstanding.
I think there's a slight little technical difficulty there that's going on, I think. But David, to your point there, let's just roll this video. I want to take a minute to look at what's happening where you live in the UK and the restrictions that the Labour Party under Starmer's has applied to the people right there in London. What's actually happening? So it's not just the EU countries. This is extending, like you're talking about, to your country that's not even a part of the European Union anymore, but is absolutely descending into very progressive leftist, very communist tactics. So let's take a look at this. I feel a lot safer though, David. I'm just telling you, I'm warning you right now. After watching this video, I feel a lot safer to come to London knowing the grannies are being thrown in jail.
Breaking news. An old lady at the age of 86 has been arrested for holding up a sign. She was arrested last Tuesday by the Scottish police. She is currently still in custody and awaiting trial. This is Broken Britain. Welcome to Keir Starmer's Britain, where you get arrested for holding a sign.
Let's tell me, explain to me what's happening.
Well, remember, and the Scottish Nationalist Party, the SNP, are even worse than Labour. They're hard left. They brought in these draconian Orwellian laws against what you can say in public. I mean, it is truly scary. I mean, comedians who go to the world's largest art festival in Edinburgh in Scotland, they're now worried what they say, the fear of arrest. I mean, it's becoming like a neo-communist Eastern European country. And that is a tragedy. I'm half Scottish. I love Scotland, but it's a tragedy for Scotland. But Starmer is as bad. He's there's been a lot of arrests for people and also very high sentences for showing legitimate concerns. I'm not saying you have to judge people by their actions. If it's violent actions, that's not acceptable. But if it's genuine worry and they're raising genuine concerns, through free speech, free expression, for those to be punished and cracked down upon is very worrying. I'm very worried the direction of travel. This is the hard left we're experiencing here. What's happened in Britain, unlike United States and Europe, is the Conservatives were in power for 14 years, 5 years with the Lib Dems, Liberal Democrats. But what is meant is the pendulum swung back. We've got the hard left government coming in, equivalent to Biden, but I think far worse in certain respects in terms of pretty hard left policies. Mm-hmm. And we are paying the price of that now through high taxation, through loss of freedoms, huge interventions, driving out wealth and wealth creators. I'm afraid this is what Labour, it's actually what hard Labour does. Tony Blair was actually quite soft left and more sensible. But what we're experiencing now, I think, is very worrying. And they have an enormous amount of power because they have a lot of MPs, members of the parliament.
Now, you guys, you left the EU, and yet do you think that there's an agreement that's been made between the EU and the UK to advance the same agenda?
Well, Starmer, our Prime Minister, is in the middle of this EU reset. He's calling it. We Conservatives, those on the, it's necessary. We've got a perfectly good trade deal, which is based on Canada and the EU, by the way, that deal, which I was involved with, which is, I call it an arm's length relationship. It's where, you're not in the EU orbit. You're not in European orbit as Norway is with its EEA agreement, your European Economic Area, or Switzerland with its agreement with the EU, which is much closer. We wanted to be arm's length, to do our own thing, to be more global, more international, which we've done. But what he's doing is right in the middle of these negotiations, including on defense. And he's loving this. But the funny thing is, it's because of Brexit that he is now sort of leading the world on Ukraine, because he's not taking orders from the EU. He's acting as a bridge between President Trump and the EU. And that's actually quite ironic, because he was very anti-Brexit, as many on the hard left were. Though many very decent Labour voters actually back Brexit. We wouldn't have got Brexit without those Labour voters from his own party. So they are actually out of step with their own voters, as well as much of the country.
Fascinating that Brexit ends up being a blessing, really, essentially, is what you're saying, and moving these things forward. We're going to be.
It's our own Declaration of Independence. I believe it. I mean, to be honest, if we were in the EU now, we'd be taking orders. We'd be paying billions, tens of billions more into EU coffers for the EU army, for the EU border force, for the EU vaccine and COVID programs. I mean, we'd be bankrupted.
Yeah, and I don't even know where that money would be coming from. Yeah, David, we're going to pause for just a moment. I'm so sorry. We're going to come right back. We're going to come right back. We have a quick commercial that we've got to put in. Thank our sponsors right now for this segment of America's Mom here on Great X America News, and of course Patriot TV. You guys, what we're talking about here right now is again maintaining self-determination and the advancement of your own country. This is why Make America Great Again was so powerful and so popular, because you're seeing the antithesis of this happening over there in the UK. You're watching them literally denigrate their own countries, sell their own countries out, export all of their own production, and then what they're receiving in is half the quality of what they would produce for their own country and actually be able to be self-reliant and independent. And you guys, in America, we are all about American manufacturing. Peter Navarro said it best, and Steve Bannon, the fastest way to get back on your feet is through American manufacturing. Bring it back home, folks. And my sponsor today, I want you all to go to shopwithpatriots.com and go check out this American storefront. Now, here's the thing I want you to understand. These are high quality, everyday use items that are already toxin free. Nothing's going to turn you fake or gay on this one. Guys, this is only going to make you healthier and happier, because you know that you are supporting American manufacturing. You're getting the highest quality products from a company that was green before it was cool and without any government gosh, I just totally lost my words there. But, the government's not paying for it. There's no US aid pouring into that one. There are nobody forced the hand of this company. They already knew what was in the best interest of the people. And they went down that path more than 40 years ago with over 450 everyday use items, from toothpaste to shampoo to your daily supplements. Amazing weight loss products, by the way, you guys, too. And your everyday household cleaners, again, that are safe for you and your whole family. Your babies can crawl around on the floor and you don't have to worry about chemical toxins. Please go check them out today. They are a great American manufacturing company. Go to shopwithpatriots.com today. Everything is made and manufactured right here in one of their 3 manufacturing facilities across the country. And oh, by the way, they also have mRNA-free beef. And I have not talked to you about that yet. We'll save that for another day. Go check them out, shopwithpatriots.com. Now let's get back to this, because again, the impact, seeing Zelensky sit there and tell President Trump, we have this water between us, but pretty soon you're going to feel the impact of this. What was he talking about, David?
I mean, I think it was a very unfortunate visit, obviously, and it went horribly wrong for everyone. But I mean, Zelensky was not well prepared, and he didn't handle it well. But I think the American reaction has been, the European reaction to it has been well over the top. As I say, they've taken out of it what they want to take out of it, which is Trump doesn't care about NATO or doesn't care about Ukraine. That isn't true and isn't right. I mean, I think, they don't seem to get the fact that President Trump is 3-4 steps ahead of them. He's doing a deal, he's negotiating, he wants peace, He's made that very clear, and I really welcome that. As I say, I know Ukraine. I know Ukrainians. I have friends who are there in Kiev and elsewhere, and we do want peace. We don't want Ukraine to collapse. So there is an imperative to get on with this,
Yes.
so I think it has to be seen in that context. It did look a bit brutal from the European point of view, but actually, let's move on and let's get that deal and let's get talking.
I want to get your take on this because last night, of course, the missiles that were being sent from the UK to Ukraine for Ukraine's benefit were clearly blown out of the water by Russia. Vladimir Putin unleashed a missile strike to sink the cargo ship, and it was confirmed that it was Russia carrying British weapons that were going to be used by Ukraine. I think this is really interesting because, again, you have this situation where Starmer supposedly has worked out a deal with President Trump, seems to be in alignment with President Trump. And now Russia has, injected themselves because Ukraine is not going to seek peace, as far as we can tell. I know there's a lot of word salad coming out of Zelensky from our perspective, but certainly there's been no move for actual, meaningful, peaceful negotiations. He says one thing, it turns out to be a lie or a half truth or incapable. I mean, even the conversation of providing the mineral wealth in exchange for protection from the U.S. I have sources on the ground that say, he doesn't even own that wealth, and he's already guaranteed so much of it to the UK. And then the rest of it, he doesn't even have ownership in. And so how can he be making deals with things that don't belong to him? And it's not that the state can't take control, but that he's a little man in a country where the people are turning against his judgments and how he's impacted the country. So how do you work all this out with Putin inserting himself by blowing those weapons up?
Well, I haven't heard about that. I mean, that hasn't been reported here yet. But yeah, I mean, this is my point about, we have been active. We have been providing Storm Shadow missiles that are very effective and clever missiles. They are very selective in their targeting and very powerful weapons. But, how can we be peacekeepers if we've been involved in providing these weapons? It should be neutral nations, those around the world, Indians maybe, or Latin Americans, or those Africans, people for peacekeeping than NATO. I think there's a problem with that. I don't know all the ins and outs. I think it's an unfortunate, and it's a very mixed picture. And of course, President Trump will know a lot more about what really is going on in Ukraine. And I hear, you hear rumors about who's doing what, etc. But it is unfortunate. But I mean, let's focus on making peace. Let's focus on getting around the table and supporting President Trump in those endeavors, rather than there's a lot of sort of comparison to Chamberlain and the war and Hitler, and which I think is very unhelpful. I mean, Ukraine actually, unfortunately, ended up backing Hitler in the war. And certain units were there's some unpleasant things, but that was a reaction to them being appallingly treated, the Ukrainians, by Stalin. So this is a very complex picture. And having been to Ukraine, it is a spiritual home. Kiev is 1,000 years older than Moscow, and the Orthodox religion was chosen there by the Vikings that actually founded Kiev. And of course, Rus, the Russians are based on the Rus tribe, which is Viking. So you can understand the bonds between Russia and Ukraine, but it doesn't excuse Russia marching in and attacking Ukraine. But it's a very complex picture that needs to be ironed out. We can only do that if we have a proper peace deal, which I fully support.
Well, David, you are a very reasonable man, and you have been able to work out negotiations between politicians who are very stubborn and pig-headed. Let's just be frank about that. The attitude is, obviously within the political realm, every man knows best than the other. If you could offer a word of advice to Zelensky, what would you say?
I would say, look, I would say, look, you've been incredibly brave. Your people have been incredibly brave. You've won to date. I think, you've held the Russians. They've not invaded Kiev. You hold most of your territory. The loss of territory is regrettable. but we don't want to go backwards. You know, there's a real danger that Ukraine, under enormous pressure, especially manpower, is you know, there's a shortage of soldiers. We know that. Now is the time to do an honourable deal, not a sellout, you know, but an honourable deal, and to talk and work through. So I think put all the energy into diplomacy to get a workable deal that doesn't lead to a sellout, but you know, is a good deal for everyone, and focus on that and help President Trump to deliver that, because it's not easy to deal with Putin, but you know, he's the man of the moment, and Putin apologized. I mean, it was unheard of, wasn't it? He apologized for shooting down an aircraft of the Russians from Azerbaijan before Trump even got into the office. So, you know, he's able to command that. That should be respected, not seen as Trump's cozying up to Putin. I mean, today he made it clear that he could be equally tough on Putin. So let's back his endeavors, because it's a hell of an opportunity to save thousands or hundreds of thousands of lives potentially, and to calm things in Europe. And I'm afraid the EU is using or misusing this to advance its super state agenda, which I really, you know, I think is dangerous.
And it's becoming very obvious that that is the goal. I appreciate your insight on that, because I'm not hearing many people comment and talk about that. But I do think with the Iron Curtain coming down on some of these countries, Romania specifically, where NATO has established the largest nuclear base in the territory and has brought nuclear bombs to their country, unbeknownst to many of them. I think there is a very big problem brewing there. And NATO, of course, has to make, you know, you got to justify your existence. And war is the only way to do that. So, David, thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate you. Go follow him on Twitter, you guys. Great insight. Someone who's been around for a long time, very reasonable. We love you. You know that.
Take care.
Thank you so much. It's really it's interesting and humbling to just kind of hear these conversations here in America, where we have only been a country that's been around for 250 years. We haven't been around that long, and to see these nations that have been around for thousands of years, the conversations, like David said, are more complex than just left or right, black or white. And it is interesting. Like, even in the conversations I've had with the leadership there in Ukraine, there is a undeniable pride in being Ukrainian. And you can't just lay down and die. You have to fight for what you believe in. The same things we would be saying here in the United States. So you understand that as an American, we're never going to lay down and die. We're just not going to do it. And we're going to fight to the end, and we're going to fight for the victory. That is a lot of the consensus there in Ukraine also. But where the line has finally been drawn is the realization that the money we sent to Ukraine did not go to the Ukrainian people. It went to over 500 NGOs, Soros-backed NGOs, by the way. Not even $5 a day could be found to help feed the orphans that have been left behind after the wreckage and the carnage of war. And that has been one of the most significant tipping points to change the direction and call for peace, and understanding that Ukraine is not going to be able to take out Russia. And I think it's worth noting also, if Russia truly had wanted, and Zelensky poo-pooed this in the office with President Trump, but if Putin had wanted to take out Ukraine, let's just be real, he would have done it in 3 days. Boy, I think they wish they had the Second Amendment right about now. We were just at the Make Europe Great Again conference and hearing from over 36 different countries in the region. And this was a conversation, obviously, that came up was, how can you get government to do what it should do according to your constitutions, which every country has their own, and the will of the people, if you have no way to enforce it? Our founders were absolutely brilliant in this consensus that in order to have the First Amendment protection, you must, in fact, have the Second. And there's nobody who's been more aggressive in going after and tearing down the Second Amendment in this country than the governor of Colorado. You know, he just, in every tyrannical situation, his name just keeps coming up. Jared Polis, who served as a former congressman and then also as a member of the Colorado Department of Education, is now the governor of Colorado for the last 5 horrifying, very difficult, challenging years, where the Colorado Constitution has been shredded along with our federal Constitution. This man is probably one of the most disliked people if you live in Colorado, if you know anything about him, yet he's been propped up by the mainstream media as a blue tennis shoe wearing, middle of the road, business producing libertarian. It's quite shocking, actually, because if you know anything about him and his policies, he is the antithesis of freedom. And we have a great friend coming on to talk to us about this today. He is a gun store owner in Colorado, right there in the heat of the battle, Westminster. Jim, thank you so much for being with us to tell us a little bit about what's happening there and to outline this crazy radical bill. You and I were talking the other day because America, you need to listen. This affects you. This bill was contrived in Washington, D.C., that was brought to Colorado. And by our conversation the other day, Jim, you said that this bill is actually meant to go out to the rest of the country. Can you hear me okay? Oh, maybe we can check. I think, are you muted? I think Jim might be muted. Can we check on that real quick?
He isn't muted
got
on
it?
my end, and we had sound a second ago, so give me a second. I'm looking at what's going on.
Okay, let's give it just a second because I'll just kind of share a little bit and then we'll bring him in because I do have some of this that I was going to share anyway before we brought him in. Basically, what's happened here in Colorado is Governor Polis, he had promised that he would not use any more taxpayer dollars to pass legislation. So when they pass these bills, you have to fund them. You have to have enforcement behind it. So if you're saying you're going to confiscate all these weapons, and you're going to require timelines and all the things Jim's going to introduce us to in just a minute, then you have to be able to enforce it, and it takes money, right? It takes finances. Jim, you with us? Can you hear me okay? Michael, see if you can touch base with him real quick.
Yep, on it.
Thank you. Okay. Let me send this over to you. So basically what's ended up happening is Polis has come up with a whole nother way, a whole nother idea in order to fund this bill by creating an enterprise. It's really kind of disgusting. It's government, it's a clever idea, but again, it's not something that fits our Constitution because no matter what you do, you are still violating the Second Amendment protections of Coloradans and those at large. So listen to this bill for just a moment. This bill that was brought forward by Jared Polis, he thought it would go very, very quickly because he is using an enterprise to fund the bill. They tried to, basically they're bureaucratizing the Second Amendment into oblivion, forcing gun owners through an absolutely absurd gauntlet of restrictions, fees, and a registry. A registry again. Okay, so here it is. You have to have a new eligibility card requirement, fingerprints, background checks, and no time limit for approval. Can you imagine going in to buy a gun and like 3 years later, they're finally like, oh, yeah, here you go. You can have it now. 4 to 12-hour training course. Okay, with victim awareness lessons, because that'll really stop criminals hardcore. Because criminals will absolutely take these classes, you guys. They're going to go to a 4 to 12-hour training because they really honor and respect the law. No, not going to happen. So, in addition to that, they have to pass with a 90% a firearm law test because now our rights have a pop quiz attached to them. So, yay for us. Also, the state-run gun registry, because nothing ever goes wrong with those. Let me just remind you that Adolf Hitler did, in fact, enforce a state-run gun registry as soon as he took office to figure out where all the guns were. Smart idea when you are a dictator. I mean, that's just a reality there. And we've talked so many times before on America's Mom that anytime you're requiring people to put their names into organizations who own guns, that's a hit list. That's a hit list for the government. We saw many examples of this during the COVID era of the ATF going to people's doors saying, you are on this list. We know you own this gun. We saw California legislation that required people to be on lists, still does. And we watched enforcement officers go to their homes and try to criminalize these people because, of course, they were not adopted or grandfathered into the new legislation. This is what's happening. Now, again, the founders knew that if you can't keep your government in check, you don't have freedom. It's just, there's no way to enforce freedom. It was one of the most obvious fundamental truths that I observed when I was there in Belgium this last time. You have a lot of people talking about, and I'm telling you, the heart is there, the passion is there, the fire is there for a lot of them, but they have to stay in this place of incredible logic because there's no way to enforce the passion, the fire, the belief, the intrinsic knowledge that this is a God-given right. It is a God-given awareness that you need to be able to defend and protect your own natural rights. And you can't do that without guns. I'm sorry. The Second Amendment was not about home protection. The Second Amendment was not about keeping bad guys out of your house and shooting deer and elk. It was about restraining your government. And with well over 350 million guns in America, that is how we ultimately keep our government in check. And I do think Jim is with us now. We've got his situation figured out. Jim, if you can join us, I want to get your take on this. You own a gun store there, and you've been the one kind of sounding the alarm on the national impact of this gun law. Can you hear me?
I think he's still having trouble hearing us, but we can hear and see him.
Oh man, that is so disappointing. Okay, let me maybe just let him know that we can hear him. It may not work out today, but that's completely fine. I'm totally prepared to talk about this because I've been following these gun grab laws for quite some time from Jared Polis and the impact that he's had on Colorado and America at large. Let's take the red flag law, for example, also. I can, Jim, I can hear you great. I can hear you really well. No? Yes? No? That's okay. Let's let it go for today, Michael. I'm going to just go right in for the sake of time. So the red flag law was another incredibly disruptive bill where all of the sheriff's associations in Colorado and, of course, support from all over the country came pouring in. But the irony of it all is that the red flag law was actually created and drafted by a Republican DA. Who thought this was a great idea, that law enforcement and government should be able to dictate whether or not somebody was having a mental crisis breakdown, and all of their guns should be confiscated and they should be put into a mental hold for 24 hours. That is the opposite of the Second Amendment. That is the opposite of freedom. People are nuts. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And obviously, there are times that we need to investigate and we need to be able to say, hey, can you go check on something? But to be able to have your neighbor or your ex-wife make a call to law enforcement and say, Billy over here is really dangerous. I want to request a 24-hour hold. That's the red flag law. They would then be able to go into the home, even doing no knock warrants, you guys, obviously jeopardizing our law enforcement because that is very dangerous, extremely dangerous to be busting into people's homes and think you have jurisdiction with a no knock warrant. Those are the worst things ever. But on top of that, who gets to determine who's so crazy they can't possess and own a gun? That's nowhere in our Constitution. The red flag law obviously passed in Colorado, but enforcement has been very, very, very minimal because, again, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. You have to have judges sign off on these warrants. And I'm not sure how many judges wanted to have their names on the bottom of those warrants to dictate and take away something that does not belong to them, to try to resell or reassign the meaning of the Second Amendment to the American people. Our guns are not up for grabs. You can't touch them. You can't have them. But one of the things about this bill that is extremely, extremely nefarious is that it was the bill basically says that you cannot grandfather any guns that where you can remove the actual clip. You guys, that's like almost every gun. Yeah, it's like every gun. There's very, very, very few guns where you don't have a clip attached to them. And most of those are hunting guns for sure. I mean, my kids have some and the bullet goes into the gun and you slide it, and it goes. But most guns have a clip that you take out, you load it with your bullets, you put it back in from basic handguns that women carry. Mine is very small. It has a clip. It comes out for personal protection. That gun is to protect me, a woman. And now Jared Polis is saying, I don't have the right to protect myself in a state where violent crime has skyrocketed, where illegals are committing crimes in massive numbers. You just saw this past week that Mike Johnston, the mayor of Denver, was actually called to DC for a congressional inquiry into the extreme rapid rise of violence and assaults and murder, all kinds of crime going on because of illegal aliens. And now we're being told as women, we can't have a gun that has a clip in it. It's now illegal in the state of Colorado, unless if you jump through all of these hoops. Jared Polis apparently thought this was going to be a shoo-in. He apparently, I just heard today and listened to some conversations about this, apparently he believed it was going to be a nothing burger to get this bill passed. But thankfully, many, many people are standing up against it and saying absolutely not. Jim DeSuger is just one of those. And I do want to put up his information, though, because first of all, he was willing to come on and talk to us. And you guys always know that there is punishment in Colorado for those who come out forward and boldly against Jared Polis's policies and what he's doing once again to the people of Colorado. There is always punishment for that, just so you know. And if you don't mind, can we put up under my name, let's just put up Jim's information and his website. I believe it was 303. I just want to make sure we have it. Jim's website there so people can go check out his amazing gun store. This is a person that is standing up as Westminster Arms, and it is 303guns.net. You guys go check it out today. You may or may not realize this is one of the many gun stores and mom and pop shop that actually takes care and provides the guns for the new cadets in the Denver area. There, this bill does not affect Cabela's, okay? This bill affects mom and pop shops that have just been trying to sell guns to equip people so they can have, this is Colorado, right? Democrats love guns in Colorado for the most part, unless if they're part of the LGBTQ cult, then we have problems there. But regular Democrats, real Democrats love guns and they hunt and they protect themselves. And you have to in Colorado, again, because of the massive illegal alien crisis that we're experiencing there. So Westminster Guns, go check them out, 303guns.net. And just know Jared Polis's policies are always designed to hurt the regular person. They're not for the rich. The rich can get around all the rules, you guys. They've got enough money to do that. It's always going to hurt the small guy, the little guy who's just trying to do something great for his community. And in this case, even selling the guns that are necessary for our law enforcement to protect you and I. It's insane. It's another example of Jared Polis's lunacy and his very, very left-wing lunatic communistic principles and ideals playing out once again all over the people of Colorado. And you need to know that bill was drafted in Washington, D.C., and its intent is to go all over the country to every blue state to try it and see if the people are going to take it, make 1,000 amendments, which still leave it as basically the bill that it was, and then pass it to restrict your gun ownership. We can't allow it to happen, or we will descend absolutely like the UK has done. We talked about it earlier. They are in the pickle they're in because they do not have any way to enforce their own constitutional protections. There's no way. It's great that people take to the streets and protest. That's awesome. But when government shuts you down, starts shooting rubber bullets at you, and then starts arresting you and throwing you in jail, how are you supposed to overcome that? How are you supposed to overcome that? That's the point. You can't. And Jared Polis would like to see those kind of restrictions right here in America. All right, friends. Amazingly, we are in the last segment of our show today. I want to be sharing a little bit more about what's happening over in the UK. But before I get there, I want to introduce you again to one of our great sponsors here on America's Mom, on X America News and Patriot TV. This sponsor, again, we are all about American manufacturing, guys. This is what makes our nation great and strong. And these people make the best products. These are the highest quality products. The dream was not to get cheap crap from China. That's not the American dream. It was great American products, high quality that you would be blessed to use, that have great impact and outcome. And this is one of those companies, Nimi Skincare, Nimi. I love using their products. I use the day and evening peptide cream. I love it because it gets in there and it lifts up the little lines and wrinkles and smooths everything out and makes your makeup lay on really nice. And you just look like super juicy and gold. And I love it. And then also their amazing cleanser. It's great for all ages. It's a vitamin C cleanser with little teeny tiny exfoliating beads to get the loose dead skin off and clean out those pores. It's very, very gentle for all skin types. You can check it out at Nimi Skincare, another great American manufacturer that are making incredible products for men and women both to look and feel their healthiest and have their healthiest, most youthful skin. I've said it before. I'm not allowed to get Botox, so I have to take care of my skin. And Nimi is providing some of the most cutting edge and great everyday use products to do and accomplish just that. Support American made, support American manufacturers, and support high quality products like Nimi Skincare. I promise you will not be disappointed. I have to share this story. We're talking again about what's happening over in Europe. Because it could very easily happen here. I was writing today for the Lindell Offense Fund and putting together an email that goes out to all of our great supporters and friends. And I realized as I was writing the email, I was literally telling the story of America just a few short months ago. Romania, as we've discussed with you guys and shared with you all before, has been under incredible duress. They housed the first Make Europe Great Again conference last April, where 30 countries came together with them to say, we want to be able to love our countries first. We do not want all of this mass immigration flowing into our countries that's disrupting our production, our communities, even their, the cultural ramifications of bringing in third world country people into first world country settings is very shocking. And I explained that I saw that in Brussels, in Belgium, when I watched a third world man use the park for his bathroom, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And 5 feet from him was a bathroom. but it's just different, right? They're coming from a different situation. And we're bringing them by the truckloads, by the thousands and thousands and thousands into these countries. So Romania, of course, is no different. They want to be able to self-determine. They want to be able to do what's in the best interest of Romanian people. Well, there was a lot of punishment that followed that mega conference. In fact, many of the leaders of that event from the AUR, the Alliance of Uniting Romanians, had their gadgets, all of their electronics taken from them. They were raided, and their electronics were taken from them. Those who had put in to run for office were constantly tapped by their government. They were listening in on their conversations. And then, of course, they were raided, and all of their everything, their computers, their phones, everything was taken from them. And by the way, it's still not been returned to this date. And those elections were in December. So it's been really, really wild. Sorry, guys. It's been really, really wild to watch this happen and watch it play out. But let me just kind of give you an example. Just this past week, there was a notification that came up from Romanian News on Twitter. And it said that they will no longer be allowing the people of Romania to post any content that denigrates their government. You heard me right. They are throwing Romania behind the Iron Curtain. You will no longer have the ability to have freedom of thought, freedom of expression, to, I don't know, announce your grievances about your own government and the horrible things that they're doing. Like, I don't know, throwing out a presidency. In December, Kalin Georgescu was nominated as the president of Romania, and the sitting president threw out the election. Literally, that is communist tactics. That's someone who did not fear any type of retribution, which, by the way, he faced none. The European Union did not hold him accountable. The courts actually agreed with him that he had the ability to throw that election out, even though it was in direct violation of the Romanian constitution. You guys, this is what's happening over there. And my concern, obviously, Romania is a country that's been standing up over there and has been empowering now over 36 other countries to stand up on their own 2 feet and say they want to be able to love and put their own countries first, and to stop the massive changes that are coming through massive immigration. And then, of course, the immersion of the woke ideology. Did you guys realize that that's happening over there also? They are flowing all of these woke ideas, DEI, trans ideology. They're also advocating and advancing don't have children. There are signs everywhere posted up, especially in Germany, that children are a burden to society. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to bring a burden into society. Literally giant billboards that are saying and expelling this information to the public and creating this narrative that children are bad, and you don't want to have one of those. Most of the region is Orthodox Christian. So this makes even less sense that they would ever want these types of ideologies to be in their country. But being a part of the European Union, they literally have had no choice. This past week, also, Kalin Georgescu was thrown in prison. I'm not joking. He was arrested and thrown in jail for his political speech. Where have we seen that happen before? Let me think. Oh, America. President Trump. That's right. All of these false allegations were launched at him so they could finally take him down and get his mugshot and put him in jail. I mean, it's not that different. In addition to silencing hundreds of thousands of voices, where did we see that happen? Right here in America. Twitter, hello, and Facebook. Well, all the platforms, really. If you had controversial speech, they called it, they dubbed you as misinformation, and they literally took down your account. On January 7th of 2020, hundreds of thousands of accounts were taken down off Twitter because they were adversarial to the Biden administration. These tactics are communism. That's what they are. And to date, nobody's been held accountable in America for doing that. None of these tech geniuses have been held accountable. Zuckerberg's still out there. He's sitting on the Joe Rogan show talking about how the FBI made me do it. Yeah, nothing's happened to them. So over in Romania, as we watched this happen, it was just 30 years ago that they were completely under communism rule. They've had a little glimmer of freedom for the last 30 years, trying to figure out how to make that light grow. And currently the EU, along with NATO, are helping to put an iron curtain back around them. To listen to George Simeon, who we've had on here many times, the president of AUR, he says they're living in a police state right now, and they are very concerned. Many of the legislators would not come on and talk to us today, who have been on our show many times, because they are concerned about retaliation, and rightly so. having their positions removed from them, or literally being thrown out of the legislation. It's a wild time over in Romania right now. And the reason that it matters so much, hang in with me on this, is because NATO has picked them. This is where NATO has put their largest nuclear base in the region. They've also brought nuclear bombs to the area. And as we talked with David today, and we see that there is this push for war, I think that we have, I just want to share this with you guys. I think we do have, let me see if we do. Yes, we do. We have, can you put that up for me? There's a graphic that we have from X regarding Romania's status. This is NATO is in there, of course, trying to take over Romania and trying to subvert the Romanian people. And I think their intention, of course, is to launch a war with Russia. They have Germany on their side. They have, the UK on their side. Everybody's talking about war, prepare for war right now. Germany, by the way, really turns the neck of the EU and of NATO. So whatever they're saying, I'm listening to what they're saying because they are dictating to the rest of those other countries over there exactly how this is going to be. And when David talked to us today about this Soviet bloc style, this state, this police state that they are creating, I agree with that. I believe that is what they're doing. They want to dictate exactly what happens in that region. They want total and complete control. And Russia really puts a damper on what they are trying to accomplish over there. And that's why I think that we're going to see more pushing, more flares. It's very, very interesting what's happening over there. So you need to pay attention. But today, there was a little bit of good news. Kaylin Georgescu was let out of prison and then promptly turned around today and went and signed his intent to run for president once again. George Simeon's friends and all of the organizations out there actually gathered over 350,000 new signatures. They had to gather all new signatures again since December and present those in order to support his nomination. Is Romania going to be able to survive the NATO squeeze? Are they going to be able to hold off the Iron Curtain? It really, really matters because NATO has decided this is where the launch of World War III is going to begin. I think we can't deny that. We need to keep our eyes wide open as they put a ring of silence around the people so that they cannot tell you what's going on. You're going to see videos taken down. You're going to see accounts taken down that are showing what is happening over there, which means I think we need to be paying attention. And it's also does not, I'm noticing, I'm paying attention. Andrew Tate has left Romania. And he has decided to come here to America, where he was not greeted well, by the way, but that's a story for another day. If Romania is going to silence free speech, you certainly can't have the likes of the Tate brothers living in your country. And they will be going back to jail if that is what the government decides to do. And that is supposed to take effect any moment now. So interesting little side note there about what's actually going on in Romania, hence impacting the entire region. It goes Romania, Ukraine, and then Russia. It's just a quick little launch of whatever nukes you have over into Russia. And I hope they're paying attention. So many people have died because of the power struggle. There are a few people at the top who want to be in charge. They want to run everything. They want to have full control. And they don't care how many people die. One of the other, pretty sad elements, I guess I would say, of this whole Ukraine situation, another line in the sand, if you will, that Ukrainians are just done. They're done with the war, is when you realize that they've been putting their 16-year-old boys on the front lines to go fight a war they know they cannot win. And by the way, they're saying that these 16-year-olds are 18, but they're not. They're 16. The videos you've seen of them driving by, taking men off the street to go fight on the front lines, it's completely true. And the Ukrainian people are tired of it. So between Romania, Ukraine, Russia, and all of the other EU states who are trying to find their way, I want to encourage you here today, America, fight, fight, fight for freedom. We are not there yet. Until we secure our elections here in America, we could descend just as rapidly as we did in 2020 into the same conditions in the same state as Romania is finding itself right now. It doesn't take long. Thank you for being with us today on America's Mom. Remember, all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men and women like you to do absolutely nothing. We'll see you back here next time.